I'd like to introduce to you our first speaker, Mr. VIVEK WADHWA. He's a fellow at Stanford University and a distinguished fellow at Singularity, and we want to thank him for telling us a little bit about how 10x thinking will empower employees in the workplace.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks for that.
But I'm sure all of you have learned about Clay Christensen's theories of disruptive innovation, how the new entrants come from the lower end of the marketplace and then scale up and disrupt. I've got news for you. Christensen's theories have been disrupted. They're out of date. The new entrants no longer come from the lower end of your market. They come out of nowhere. As Peter Diamandis says, it's two kids in a garage basically building an exponential technology that come and disrupt major industries. This is what's happening. This is the difference between linear thinking and exponential thinking. Let me explain to you what I mean by that. All of us are human beings. We think linearly. If I ask you how far 30 steps is, all of you can take a guess. 30 steps is roughly 30 meters. If I ask you what 30 exponential steps is, I doubt most of you will have a clue. 30 exponential steps is 26 times around the planet, 1 billion meters. That's how technology is advancing. Ray Kurzweil explained it best. What he said was that whenever a technology becomes an information technology, it goes exponential. And that is what is happening with artificial intelligence, with sensors, robotics, medicine, 3D printing, synthetic biology, and a whole host of different types of technologies. They're going exponential. And those are the ones that are going to hit your businesses out of nowhere and disrupt your companies before you know it. We don't have decades anymore. We have years before we start seeing large-scale disruption. And you can't pick up innovator's dilemma anymore and think that you've got the solution. It don't work, to put it very simply. Let's start with good old medicine to show you what's happening on that. I'm sure all of you are aware right now that we have an encyclopedia of medical knowledge available on the internet. I don't think you understand the magnitude of this encyclopedia. You have more knowledge available to you than the leading scientists, the physicians, researchers had as recently as 15 or 20 years ago. You get up-to-the-date knowledge as it happens. Any advance anywhere in the world, and you read about it immediately. This is a type of information that very few people had ever before. It's readily available to you for free. As well, your smartphones have now become medical devices. You can buy glucose meter add-ons for your phones. I have one from AliveCore, which is a cardiologist, which basically does EKGs. This device is commercially available right now for $200. Indeed, there are hundreds of devices already on the marketplace. And with Apple now announcing the Health Kit and the Health Platform and their watch, I'm sure Google is going to be in the game before you know it as well. I can't imagine our friends being left behind. And if Google gets into it, Microsoft is going to get into it, everyone is going to get into it. We will have all sorts of new medical devices that we haven't even imagined yet readily available to us. And soon we'll have sensor devices that monitor our internals. You remember that movie Fantastic Voyage in which we shrunk those human beings and put them in a capsule and they went inside the body? Forget about the shrunken human beings. I'm not predicting that'll ever happen. But the capsules are already commercially available. The smart pills are commercially available. Imagine how we can start using them and they can start going inside our body and now adding sensor data to it. Imagine being able to deliver medications to specific organs of your body, specific regions of your body. Right now, if we get sick, what do? We go to the doctor and he or she prescribes antibiotics. It poisons the entire body. Why not deliver precise medications to where it's needed? This is not very far away. The beauty of sensors is that they provide continuous health data. Right now, when we get sick, we go to the doctor, and the doctor takes a few medical tests. It's a one-off thing. And he or she takes notes that not even he can understand or she can understand, right? Imagine now having data on you 24/7. As you wake, as you sleep, as you shower, as you go to the bathroom, as you brush, all of these data now are being uploaded to the cloud and having AIs monitoring that data and warning you when something is about to go wrong. Or when you're about to have that extra piece of cheesecake, you get an SMS, abort, abort, abort. Just don't do it. This is where we're headed. And that's just the beginning. There's also the human genome. About 13 years ago, we read front page coverage of Craig Venter, beating the US government to the punch in sequencing the human genome. The government spent roughly $3 billion on it. Venture spent about $100 million and beat the government to the punch using the government's own data. Guess what that costs today? $1,000. The significance of this is it will become software. You folks are largely in the IT business. You manipulate software to understand commercial data. Imagine now being able to take the data from sensors and from the genome and the revolutions that become possible. This is where we're headed. This is a chart from Eric Green, who works for the US government in the Genomics Project. He forecasts that in the 2020s, we will be prescribing medications based on the human genome. Forget about delivering medication to an organ or a region of the body. Imagine being able to prescribe medications based on individuals. Right now, it's one size fits all, yet we're different. Two of us can have the same parents, yet we look and behave completely differently. Our software is different. This is the era we're headed into. We'll have personalized medications based on data. So we take our genetic profile, we take our microbiome, which is the ecosystem within us, we take our medical history, and then information about lifestyle and habits. Because even though we may have, quote, healthy DNA or be less prone to disease, we could screw it up by having an awful lifestyle and doing really dumb things. Imagine taking all of these data now and the next generation of IT systems focusing on human health. This is where we're headed, very rapidly. And soon, robotic surgeons. Already intuitive surgical markets, a semi-autonomous robotic surgery kit by which the doctor can be here, the patient can be over there, and it does very precise, accurate surgery. Now, the question I ask you is, why do we need human beings? When, as of last year, computer vision became greater than human vision. When computers don't drink, they don't get distracted, they don't have fights with their spouses, they don't come in grumpy in the morning to operate on their patients. Give it 15 or 20 years, and I would trust an AI-based robotic surgeon to operate on me rather than a human being any day. This is where we're headed, and it's not more than 15 or 20 years away. That's the time frame in which these major advances will happen. In that time frame, also expect, remember Steve Austin and the $6 Million Man? I think Steve Austin will cost about $6,000, not $6 million. And we will have commercial prototypes of Austin in the 2025 to 2030 time frame. In fact, if you go to Richmond, which is not very far from here, go to visit Exobionics, they'll demo to you their exoskeletons. That beautiful woman over there is Amanda Boxtel. She had a skiing accident 15 or 20 years ago. She couldn't walk. You see her walking around right now with an exoskeleton built by those folks. We will have enhancements to our bodies, which will be the next big thing in sports. How can you tell if someone is enhanced? Right now, we worry about drugs. Imagine worrying about enhancements, superhuman vision, superhuman hearing, other types of physical enhancements to our bodies. This is in the 2025 to 2030 time frame, we're going to be there. And then robots will also be doing the jobs of clerks, pharmacists, surgeons, as I talked about. You'll have robots doing a lot of the work that human beings do. And this is not in the 2025 to 2030 time frame. This is in the 2015 to 2020 time frame. This is a roadmap by DARPA on the robotic realities. Already we're building humanoid, android-like devices. Do you think it's a coincidence that Google renamed their operating system Android and is buying up every robotic manufacturer in the world? But the fact is that we're now headed into this era of androids, like what we saw in science fiction. Already, you can buy robots that can do agriculture or manufacturing in the $20,000 to $30,000 time frame. These robots work 24/7. They don't complain. They don't join labor unions. They don't commit suicide. They do the same task over and over again without complaint. And they don't cost much. As of this year, believe it or not, it is cheaper to manufacture in the United States than it is in China. Think about what I just said. It is cheaper to manufacture in the USA than China. Manufacturing to China has stalled. It's trickling back right now. The trickle will become a flood over the next 5 to 10 years because we will have now the value chains, the supply chains being moved back to the United States and Europe. And then it won't make sense to ship goods all the way to the Far East to have slave labor manufacture goods, and then to have it shipped back. We won't need those human beings anymore. This is in this decade. Not science fiction, not 50 years from now, this decade. And guess who's building robots? It isn't just the geniuses at Google and the robotic manufacturers. It's kids who are building it. In fact, if you want to inspire your children to get into STEM, I highly recommend that you get them to attend FIRST Robotics. They have FIRST Robotics all over the country. When we were young, we would do mechano-kits and erector sets, and this is how our parents encouraged us to study engineering. Our kids can be building robots. Don't be surprised if one of our children ends up building Rosie from the Jetsons. I used to dream about Rosie when I was young because I used to make a mess, and my dream was that I have Rosie cleaning up after me so I wouldn't have to worry. And I expected that by the time I was I was older, I'd have a Rosie robot. But it never came because the computing power required to do voice recognition, face recognition, and to do sophisticated movements, and the sensors required would have cost millions of dollars. They would have required crazy supercomputers the size of this room. And guess what? Your smartphones have more computing power than the Cray supercomputers did. In fact, they have multiples of the computing power of the early Cray supercomputers. And what do our phones do? They sit in our pockets waiting for us to occasionally check email or to tweet every now and then, or maybe we make some phone calls, God forbid. This is a supercomputer we carry in our pockets. Imagine now adding it to robots and what you can build. Your kids will build it. And then look at printing. You remember the good old days of typesetting? Most of the people in this room aren't the young kids from Silicon Valley. They're middle-aged. So I'm sure you remember when we used to have to print things, you would have to worry about typesetting costs. Ask the young kids in Silicon Valley what typesetting is, and they'll give you a blank stare. They have no clue what typesetting is. But that's what printing used to require, because printing was complex. Even today, academic papers, if you see them, you note that they have all the charts at the end. Why don't they have the charts embedded within the text? Because typesetting was complex and difficult. So academics run behind the times. My friends in academia still do things the old-fashioned way, but we've gotten beyond it. And now we have 3D printing. I mean, it's just amazing. All of this is 3D printed. It's amazing what 3D printing makes possible. I'm sure you've all seen 3D printers. You can just Google it and watch them online. But look at this 3D printed car. Imagine being able to custom order your own designed automobiles, which drive themselves. Which, I don't know if Google is doing this project or not, but I'd love to see them become transformers and transform into Rosie the robot when you get back home. The beauty of 3D printing is that complexity is free. You can create objects and shapes and designs which we couldn't possibly do in a manual fashion. This is the beauty of 3D printing, and it's available to us today for practically nothing. Nanotechnology. Nanotechnology we've been hearing about for 10 or 20 years. It's still science fiction. But nanomaterials are not. The beauty of nanomaterials is that they can make vitamins and drugs easily absorbed. They can make paints brighter, longer lasting, make metals harder. I mean, you're already seeing nanomaterials now showing up in our car paint, in our baseball bats, in our bicycles. Nanomaterials are being used everywhere. And the most amazing nanomaterial of all is graphene. I don't have time to give you a lecture on graphene, but just Google it and understand the applications of graphene. It is amazing. It's stronger than any other material known to mankind. And it conducts heat and electricity better than anything else. Just watch to see how we have graphene in our chips, in our computer chips, and graphene everywhere. And then I talked about reading DNA. Guess what? We can also write DNA. Imagine being able to program new organisms, just like you write software, being able to design new types of organisms which make plants generate more nitrates, which clean up carbon dioxide, which do all these amazing things. Now, for most of you, this is too far advanced. Guess who's doing it? Children are. Just like I talked about FIRST Robotics, there's an iGEM contest in which kids are building the most amazing devices you can possibly imagine. This is another great thing to get your children into, is doing synthetic biology experiments. Now, I talked about all the disruption, but I see disruption as opportunity, because wherever you're going to have change, you have the opportunity to create major new advances and to build new industries. And this is what's going to happen. With manufacturing, I talked about robotic manufacturing, but in the 2020s, what I expect is that the robots will go on strike with placards saying, "Stop the 3D printers, they're taking our jobs away." Because this is the rough roadmap to 3D printing. Already we can print personalized consumer goods. We're going to get into start doing most small-scale printing and artistic work using 3D printers. Already a lot of the design work for large companies is being done. All the prototypes are being built using 3D printers. In the next decade, we're going to be doing 3D printing virtually everything, including buildings, including the electronics in our smartphones. Just imagine a world of Star Trek, where you had the replicator producing small-scale and large-scale objects. This is a near certainty. This is not science fiction. I mean, even this chart is put together by Carl Bass, the CEO of Autodesk, and Carl is quite conservative. We're headed there, whether you believe it or not. Education, my favorite topic. It used to be that education was one-to-one. We learned from our teachers, from our preachers, from our friends, and then came the Industrial Revolution in schools. And in schools, when we were young, if we shared knowledge, it was called cheating. For our kids, it's called collaboration. That's many to many. And now you have MOOCs. To me, MOOCs are primitives, like the early days of TV. When I see this stuff, and Salman Khan is wonderful, but when I watch his videos, I'm saying, what is this? This is primitive. This is like the early days of TV. Where's the ambition? Where's the vision? Where's the world-changing technology? Soon, we're going back to the era of one-to-one instruction with AI-based tutors, digital tutors, which monitor our learning and adapt the lessons to our needs. They remember where we are, they remember how we learn, and they teach us in the method that's most appropriate to us. IT services, which is near and dear to many of your hearts. The mouse, it will soon be dead. I don't know why we still have this primitive creature on our sophisticated devices. Gesture-based recognition is going to be mainstream in the next few years, and we're going to be reprogramming our systems. And then also outsourcing. You remember that evil word about outsourcing? It's now become crowdsourcing. And then work has become micro-work. We're no longer sending away major IT systems. We're now talking about small tasks and being able to outsource those to the appropriate people. I just did something pretty radical. I'm one of the ones, if you Google my name and so the articles I write, go to my website, wadhwa.com, you'll see that I'm very passionate about the lack of women in Silicon Valley. I've been brutal. I've been beating the crap out of the Silicon Valley mafia, the boys club, about the fact it leaves out women, it leaves out African Americans, and it leaves out Latinos. Inexcusable. I wanted to write a book about women in tech, but I'm a guy. What's a guy doing telling women what to do? So I decided to crowd create it. I crowdfunded it, and I crowd created it. Within weeks, I had years of research done for me. And I was able to create a fabulous book, which is now commercially available. Soon, we're going to have, already you've seen how tablets have taken over. My prediction that by the end of this decade, we have 3 billion new devices, which are smartphones. Smartphones are going to eclipse tablets. We will have billions of these. We're going to have another a slide, another line there, which is even more linear. I'm sorry, more exponential. Apps eating software, you know about this stuff. Storage is becoming free and moving to the cloud. Bottom line is that $1 trillion opportunities happen at the intersection of exponential technologies. Disruptions are happening everywhere you look. Entrepreneurs can do what only big governments and research labs could do before. Big companies versus startups, you're all about protecting your market, processes, existing markets, and limiting risk. In the world we are in Silicon Valley, it's all about disruption, wiping out the big players, changing the world, and so on. What you need to do is you need to start looking at the big picture and learning how to identify exponentials. Look for what's coming outside your industry, and look for where the disruptive change will be. You need to essentially become entrepreneurs. Now, you'll ask that entrepreneurs are these young kids in Silicon Valley that we read about. False. Don't buy this nonsense. Entrepreneurs, the average age of a Silicon Valley entrepreneur is 39. it is not 21 or 19, as you will read in the press. They tend to be old people like us, my friends. They're not college dropouts either. Don't believe this nonsense about college dropouts ruling. They do not. The majority of successful entrepreneurs are highly educated. Education counts, not necessarily Ivy Leagues. I mean, I was at Harvard, Stanford, Duke at the same time, and when I would put these slides up, I know my colleagues would cringe because I was saying that elite education doesn't provide you a real advantage. That's what the research shows, that you can be from any college and be a successful entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs tend to be highly experienced. Experience gives you a big advantage in entrepreneurship. There's no doubt about it. That experience, age, maturity are big advantages. This is something all of you have. All of you are experienced. You're the entrepreneurs. And people weren't necessarily born entrepreneurs. Bottom line is that it isn't some kid out of school that's going to save your company. It's you who has to do it. You have to learn to be entrepreneurs. You have to change the world. You have to behave like these kids in Silicon Valley that you read about disrupting, changing, thinking big, and looking outside your industry for solutions. That's where the solutions are going. That's how you're going to save your companies. You have to disrupt yourselves. Look at Steve Jobs, even Facebook. Why do you think Zuckerberg bought Instagram and spent $1 gazillion buying WhatsApp? Because he worried about these newcomers disrupting his industry, so he started buying everything he could. This is the type of thing that you have to do. Peter Diamandis has done a lot of work on it, and he talks about the exponential technologies and then the tools that you have in large organizations to take advantage of these advances. Everything from crowdfunding to taking advantage of micro work and ideation and so on. And there are many techniques that you can use. On top of that, you can also do Google-style moonshots. I know they'll be talking a lot about it during the day, but that is the type of thinking that you need to bring into your corporations, that you need to be able to think outside the box, be the disruptors. Don't wait for some kid to come and save the day for you. Do it yourself. Look outside your industry. Look at everything that might happen to you. Look at the trends in computing. You have to really, with exponential technologies, you have to look forward at the curve. For example, if you're designing new systems today, you have to assume that gesture, voice, even embedded, like Google Glass, embedded displays are going to be the future. You have to assume computing will advance even more rapidly. You have to assume that change will happen and you'll have billions of smartphones. Now design your systems. Look forward, think outside the box, and disrupt yourselves. That's what you need to do. You can read more on my website, wadhwa.com. Follow me on Twitter. But this is what I've been researching and writing about. And I'm convinced that this is the most innovative decade in human history, when we're going to use technologies to solve humanity's grand challenges, to disrupt industries, and to make the world a better place. So save your own companies by learning all this stuff. Thank you, everyone.